call this meeting of the June 21st, 2022 meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Hartman.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
McManus.
Here.
Solomon.
Here.
Stazen.
Here.
Zinke.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The first item of business in the absence of Chairman Zellmer, had to leave town for some business, would be to elect a chairman pro tem. Is there a motion to elect a chairman pro tem?
I move that we elect George Solomon as our what pro tem?
Chair pro tem.
Chair pro tem.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion is made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carried. The meeting is yours.
Bravo. Okay. First rule of business is approval of the meeting minutes from May 17th, 2022. Are there any questions, additions, deletions? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Do a roll call, please.
Hartman.
Here.
Approve the minutes.
Oh, aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
McManus.
I'll abstain. I wasn't here at the last meeting.
Solomon.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Zinke.
Aye.
Minutes have been approved. First up is 22.5 and 22.7 West Main. Okay, we're gonna abstain from the 5-minute field guide for tonight, and we're gonna go right to 225 and 227 West State Street.
Thank you, Chairman Pro Tem. 225 and 227 West State Street is a concept review coming before the commission for review and feedback. The applicants are Ryan Van Osdol of the Business Law Group and Justin Rios is his architect from Metaverse Design and Studio. It's on. Yes. The property is located in the North Geneva Historic District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and is located approximately at the center of the local Geneva Historic District. The building was built in 1908 as the John C. Strader Drug Store building. You can see the image from about the 1920s on the left and a present-day view on the right. The building is a kind of unique, eclectic building incorporating some classical revival elements as well as some prairie school elements that I identified in the staff report. I have some example buildings that have some of the same features that were built around the same time. To kind of give you an idea of where this architecture is coming from, it's a rather unique architectural expression in our commercial district. The existing architectural elements on the building are I should point out that the storefront has been remodeled probably somewhere around 1940 and then altered afterwards. The historic bulkhead and storefront arrangement has been altered so that the doorway now is off to the far right to the first floor, where it had been a centrally located door with flanking display windows on either side. When this alteration was made, beadboard bulkhead and paneling were installed around the 225 entrance door. On the opposite alcove is the stairway to the second floor, and that bulkhead has been replaced sometime in the last 30 to 40 years with T111 reverse board and batten siding in the bulkhead, and the return window has been replaced with glass block. However, if you look above, you can see that there is a surviving prismatic glass transom above the glass block window, which would have been clear glass originally. Other details of the building that are character-defining features include the carved limestone bracket on the far left side of the storefront. That carved bracket actually serves a purpose. This building was an infill building on the block. The former State Bank building on the corner was built a year ahead of this building, and that building was set back from the traditional street face of the other buildings in the block. And so this bracket actually bridges the gap between the offset, so that the second floor aligns with the traditional street front of the north side of the State Street, but then the first floor steps back to align with where the State Bank was built. The historic transom at the storefront has been covered with a plywood panel for the last about 30 years at least. It's unclear whether the prismatic glass transoms survive behind that plywood facing. It's been used as a sign panel in the last 30 years or so. And then on the far right, there's surviving cast iron columns flanking the storefront that still exist. The proposal is to convert the two-story unit into a single unit that could be that the second floor could be accessed from the main floor without going outside. That's the main driver behind this proposal for the storefront renovation. The prospective purchaser and the architect have basically built off of what is existing and then added to it, and then modified the west alcove door to accommodate a turned stairway that meets code on the interior of the building. The original proposal was to bring the west alcove out flush with the storefront. We've worked back and forth with the applicant, and they've made numerous changes to be more sensitive to the original rhythm and architecture of the storefront. They are proposing to replace or cover the existing plywood area over the historic transom area with beadboard siding to match the beadboard that's in other locations. And then they would use that area as a sign panel for the new business. They are also proposing to install a new aluminum storefront system in the on the front facade, and then removing the door to the former stairway entrance and replacing that with a glass window and retain the historic transom above that. Just to give you some orientation, this is what the views would look like from the inside looking out towards the street from various places within the interior. And then the area that's circled in red is again how the architect is proposing to turn the stair and preserve the historic alcove, and yet provide a compliance area that provides connectivity between the first floor and the second floor. That is the general overview of the project. At this time, I would turn the lectern over to Ryan Van Osdel and his architect, Justin Rios, to add and further elaborate on the project and then answer any of your questions. And again, this is a concept review, so it's not a binding review at this point. So if you'd like to come forward.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for working with us, Mike. I really appreciate all your efforts. Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Van Osdel. I'm the owner of the Business Law Group. I live in Geneva over on Easton Avenue, and will hopefully be bringing my business here as well.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Justin Rios, the architectural designer on the project. Just to give you a little bit of overview on how we've been working back and forth to make sure that we preserve the historic nature of the building while adhering to those guidelines and kind of updating the building a little bit to make it suitable for Ryan himself and his business to come here. We're really excited about the project, and any questions that you may have, materiality or organization of the interior and the facade, we're here to listen.
Oh, so you have nothing more to say? You're waiting for our questions?
Waiting for your questions.
Okay.
I'll start off with an easy one that has nothing to do with the character of the elevation, except when you took that stair from the second floor and turned it into the interior, don't you need a means of egress from the second floor directly to the outside?
So we meet code. Code dictates and states that you need 200 feet means of egress for this type of building from the second floor. So we meet that
But
requirement.
I see the vestibule and so you're gonna maintain a direct passage then?
Yeah, so
In that lobby, foyer, whatever it is, just to have that egress?
So you have egress from the second floor, most remote point.
Okay.
You need 200 feet, and so we have that. And we went over this with the fire marshal and kind of looked at that as well, and we talked with them to make sure that we maintain that distance. So we went through that as well to make sure that
Yeah,
in
it
doing
seems a
so.
contrivance kind of in some way, but I know the goal is to have interior access to the second floor
Yeah.
from the first, okay.
Yeah. So it's a stricter guideline, the 200 feet, so we actually had to calculate it based on the run of the stair, the diagonal. So we made all those requirements, and we're well under the 200 feet.
200, that's if it's sprinkled, right?
No.
No?
And I should mention what Mr. Rios has said. They've not only met with me, but we have met with the building commissioner and the fire marshal jointly as this project has progressed, so that those code questions have been answered while they're addressing the design issues.
I have a question. So on the very front where the plywood is, you're going to be taking that off?
So the original intent was to, but looking at it, we're hoping to just reuse what was there, if it's in good enough shape, and/or replace the panels so that we're keeping what was already there intact and not pulling materials and altering them, putting the beadboard up top. So it would more likely be that we would be painting those panels to match the rest of the facade.
Okay.
So then, do I understand that the original features of the building, which seem to be covered with wood right now, will continue to be covered with wood, perhaps a different layer of wood? Is that what you're saying?
No, the same that's there now would remain. We would peel the paint off of it, strip it, and then take a look at the wood to make sure that it hasn't rotted or deteriorated in any way. And if it hasn't, then we would refinish that instead of pulling those panels down. Like Michael had said, we don't know if the prismatic glass is still behind there. So we wouldn't be pulling those panels off unless it required us to, in terms of if it had wood rot or whatnot.
I see, okay. So then my question is asking if there is prismatic glass behind the wood, and there are other original features behind wood, in your, in the work that you want to do, you will continue to have those features behind wood?
Yeah,
That's what you're
currently.
saying?
Yeah, currently. That's the proposed idea at this point.
I see.
But if it's, if it's in good enough shape, the prismatic glass, and it can be preserved and used as part of the facade to bring it back to what it was, and it's cost effective for my client, then that would be a definite thing that we would do, if that was your recommendation or what you would want to see. But we haven't purchased it completely, and we don't know exactly what's behind there. And
Of
so,
course.
in trying to keep within his budget and get him into the building so he can be part of the community and bring his business in here, we're trying to keep what's already there.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, the door that is on the west side is the original door that you're planning on removing?
For the second floor?
Yes.
Yes.
So because that's the original door, what will you do with it? Will you hopefully use it someplace else, or?
We can. I know there are a lot of historical architects that would also like it to use in one of their projects, maybe locally, if we can't find a place for it on the interior. But we can definitely look to reuse that door and keep it part of the building if that's something you guys would like to see.
Can you explain why you cannot use the original door in your project as is?
In the current location that it is right now. So in looking at the floor plan layout and Ryan wanting to access the second floor from the interior so that he could have his clients go upstairs to his office and not having to exit the building to go back into it, we would have to actually push out that facade to make it flush. So we wouldn't have that recess anymore in that alcove. We would have to push it out to keep that door. So we would be pulling that door out and then bringing it forward to be part of that front facade. And in doing so, we'd be covering up one of the limestone brackets that is currently there. And I know that's an important historical feature of the building. So this seemed like the only way to accommodate both the historical nature of the facade as well as Ryan's needs for the actual function of the building. In doing so, we would actually keep the existing frame and transom. We would just be replacing the glass underneath where the door was. And then in doing so, the beadboard that runs along the bottom, we would just extend it so we would look intentional, like the window was supposed to be there all along.
I think the other thing too that we've talked about is that where the landing will be would be above the bottom panel of the door, so the landing's would be visible in the glass of the door if the door was to remain there.
Yeah.
So again, that's just the nature of getting this stair turned into the first floor. The landing is going to be higher than the bottom of the glass of the door that's there.
Yeah, and then in doing that, I made sure that the elevation of that landing wouldn't be higher than the new glass that would go in there. And the bottom line, so the sill for all the windows would match up. And so we wouldn't have this wonky one window a little higher than the rest of the facade, so everything does line up.
Okay, well, I guess in my opinion, I believe that's unfortunate, because I think the best part of this particular building storefront is that west window in alcove, because that is original to the building, which is, what was that, 1908, 1909? So that's, for me, that is a big problem, that you're going to ruin the best part of the front of the building. The beadboard that's on there, Mr. Lambert, do we have an idea about the date of the beadboard?
I don't have an exact date. I know the building was remodeled several times after Mr. Strader sold the pharmacy business, but I don't have an exact date of when the front was totally changed. I suspect from looking at it, it's probably 1940s era,
40s.
but that's a guess.
Okay, thank you.
So I've got a couple of questions. On the west door that we're discussing, when it's opened, is there, say, just for the conversation, is there a landing at floor level, like 3 feet for the door to swing in?
It actually swings out.
It swings out. So approximately how much space is inside that opening?
Oh, that's where the stairs are.
And
Yeah, if I was to open the door and step in, where do the stairs start?
probably around 2 feet until you hit the first step.
That's it? It was only 2 feet?
Yeah, so we did look at, can we keep the stair and the door and just have an opening in the wall?
Right.
We wouldn't be able to do that, one, for the handrail extensions for ADA, for accessibility, and two, there's just not enough room. And so we also looked at, can we inch that facade a little bit forward and keep the door? And we still won't have enough room, and then we'd be running into the window that is on the west side of, so it's actually on the east side of that alcove. We actually have, so what was done here is someone took out the glass from this frame and they added the glass block, which is not historical in nature to this building. So we'd be eating into that frame. So there's a couple restrictions on the building itself that wouldn't allow us to actually pull out that facade to accommodate that entry to that stair. So, and what we're proposing, we're looking at taking that glass block out, putting the glass back in how it's supposed to be, keeping the prismatic glass above, not touching it, making sure that that all stays the same. The biggest modification, like we're talking about, is basically the door. And, you know, we can look at reusing that door if we were to take that door maybe and shift it to the east entry, I know it's not historical in nature to that entry, and I know that entry was already modified from the original intent of the building design. But that would still maybe be using, a historical part of that building back into it instead of removing it completely.
Okay. So is that a strong possibility that that door could become the east entrance
It
to the
can.
building?
We have to take a look at it. It would probably have to be repaired. There's some rot at the bottom of the door and some wear and
course.
whatnot. And then hardware, modern day hardware that's required for exiting purposes. You would see a rim device through the glass. So you'd see the back end of it. So there are some other items that would be put on the door that wouldn't be historical in nature just due to exiting requirements. But if those little items aren't, a big deal, then yes.
Michael, I have a question. Has there been in the past in this situation that someone has presented to the board of an original historic door that has been fully eliminated?
I can't recall one off of the top of my head on a commercial building, but we've had several residential buildings where they have taken original doors and removed them because either there was rot or because of the way they were built, it was an interior material, interior veneer wood, for instance, on the interior, and they could not turn around and expose it to the exterior. So I can think of at least a couple of residences where they have removed historic doors from primary facades.
Quite a situation here as far as what you want to do,
Yeah.
as far as stairs.
Yeah, the access to the second floor for the main space is what is dictating all these moves.
What year is that door's original?
Yeah.
I would say if the PowerPoint was cooperating tonight and the presentation, I had a presentation on authenticity, original, and significant. I would hesitate to say that this door is original. I think it's early. I think it's an authentic storefront door, but I don't know that it dates to 1908. It may date to the 1940s remodeling. So just again,
Excuse me, I was out there and I looked at that door. I'm not, professional on that, but I tend to agree that that was probably not the original door that was in that opening when that building was built.
You can mostly tell by the
It's hard to
glass.
say, but, it's still, okay.
There's a lot going on here, and when I look at this, that's what, the more I look at it, the more confusing it gets. But we talked about everything but the columns. The columns are going to remain,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, they will not be
But
moved.
there is a header of some sort, a lintel, or what is it above that connects the two columns? The one photo, there is something visible on the building above there, and it looks like, it's being covered up? Is it being removed?
It's the brick that's above it, so
no,
the cast
it
iron
looks
goes to the
like-
underside, and there's a piece of steel
Isn't-
that runs across it, right?
Oh, yeah, there is a piece of steel.
Yeah,
Is
that's,
that part of the column original? Where did that,
I don't think any of us in the room can answer that right now because, again, as they've said, they're prospective purchasers. They have not started doing investigation.
okay.
And we don't know how they built it. We know it was a central entrance originally, and we don't know what they did to modify it to move the entrance to the east side. So there could be transoms up there. They could have removed all that, and it could all just be open and kind of floating there. So until they own the building, it's really hard for them to
Okay. Well,
give you a definitive answer of what exists
I
up there.
just think I answered my own question. On the 1919 photo, it looks like there's a couple more columns in that storefront. So
that's
probably the span was shorter,
both sides.
and when they removed those, they would have had to change the structure
Yeah.
to carry that second floor.
Yeah, if you look
So
at
it's-
the building, you can see the edge of it. It's all rusted out a little
Right,
bit.
so it's probably not an original member
Yeah.
like the other two columns are.
Yeah.
But on your new elevation, we have the glass on the second floor
Mm-hmm.
with the arch and the members, and some of it are, is the glass going to change on the second floor as
No,
well?
no.
So that will remain
Yes. As is.
shown there,
Yeah.
okay? Because there are column elements pretty beefy, and I guess if there was anything in the storefront, I would like to see, could we go to the new elevation, Michael, please? There. The members there are very narrow. And, but given the beadboard, I don't know, am I trying to accomplish something too much where to get the character of the window framing on the second floor integrated more into the glazing on the first floor? I mean, right now, it seems to me it just introduces another element.
So that's
And-
original, and for our conversations with Michael, that was the requirement to actually keep what was already there, which is 2 panes of glass divided by a single mullion for that storefront.
Originally, they had it divided into four lights, 4 windows, which was a rhythm that was nothing
Okay.
historic. So I had suggested, again, going back to some of the other commercial storefronts we have done, that to
Okay.
have more of a display window
Right.
scenario. And to go to your point, if you look at the historic photograph, the historic storefront had no connection to what was going on the
Right.
second floor visually or architecturally.
Well, given
so
how
it's-
narrow the street is, you'd probably, the only way you'd see both stories is across the street anyway, so walking by it, there'd be no basis for comparison between the first and second floor anyway, because that's a pretty narrow sidewalk
Yeah.
to begin with, so,
And I would also just add, and I think I had it in the staff, a report, is that my understanding is these are not original windows, and we don't know how accurately they were replaced
Right.
when they were put in, when the
Right.
Road to Perdition was filmed here, because they did replace those windows, I understand, for the film.
I guess, in summary, if I had a comment, because of all these elements, it does seem rather busy. And if there was a way to simplify visually to get the whole building functioning with some similarity, given that we're changing around stuff kind of a lot, I would certainly favor that approach, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, before.
Yeah, because we've got that limestone member, we've got
Yeah.
cast iron columns, we've got glazing, you name it, it's there somewhere, and
Yeah.
then the whole upper is
A lot different.
brick with an arched kind of, and so I know that was similar to, I guess, the original construction and how the storefront was dissimilar to the second, but there's a lot going on there.
There's a lot of different architectural components that are within this one building.
So if the, if the existing plywood, that's where your sign will be, cannot be repaired, or for whatever reason you need to take that down? What, is there a drop ceiling in there or something? You can't really see it from the inside either, can you?
No, yeah, you can't really see it from the inside, but there's
Will
enough
they-
ceiling
Will they
height
come
within
back
there.
and present, will you come back and present a solution? If, let's say there is prism glass, or there is not, will you guys be coming back for a solution to that?
We wouldn't know that until we'd have a permit to actually do work.
Okay.
And by that time, the solution that we had presented
Sure.
today would probably be moving forward. And in saying that, we would need a place for signage, like most of the businesses on
Sure.
the street have, so that proposed area is really the only place for signage on the exterior. I wouldn't want to put any signage on that limestone. I don't want to put any anchors into it because it's so old, and if we're drilling into that old limestone, it's definitely going to cause it some harm.
Was there ever an awning, Michael, on that building? The way it looks like there's flashing at the top of,
Yes, the historic picture shows the awning that was on the building originally. It's in the up position.
Yeah,
okay.
so that's what was in that.
Kind of see some flashing up there, it's kicked out on the building
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah, that's what's right at the bottom edge of it.
Right, okay, okay. That's about all the questions I have.
Now, my understanding is that you do not own the building at the present moment.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right. So then you need to buy the building, and then you need to come up with your plans to get a permit, and you need to come to us for approval for those plans. Okay.
So the reason they're before the commission tonight with this concept review is they were trying to get kind of a temperature of what the commission is for this solution, if this is what they move forward with, so they know whether or not they can make this staircase work and go ahead with the purchase of the building. So what they're really looking for is, if all the factors they've identified tonight, if this is what remains and what is going to be possible to do within their budget and with what's existing, is this an acceptable approach to the commission? I know we've talked about a lot of things, what if this, what if that, but the question they want to know is, if this is what they come back with for the permit review, if this solution here they're presenting, if that's going to be acceptable to the commission at this point with the information you have.
So, just comment here. So basically, the upstairs facade is staying the same.
Yes.
That's not changing. We're not doing any changes, colors or anything like that.
No.
And we're replacing the beadboard up and down? I mean, well, on the base there.
The base, yeah, it's pretty deteriorated and eaten up, so we'd have to replace the beadboard at the base.
The glass panels are really not changing a whole lot from where we are right now. So the main issue is the doorway on the left.
Yes.
Looking at that picture, and then above the current plywood on the top, we're gonna see what kind of shape it's in, and then just paint it, refinish it, paint it, and then use that for the signage, which is
Yeah.
what it's been used for in the past.
Yes.
Now, what about the doorway on the right?
So we would be replacing that doorway on the right with a more weather-tight, updated storefront that still coincides with what's currently there, and/or if we can fit the existing door, like we had talked about previously, into that frame in some manner. Maybe we can actually do a wood frame for it to match the other side. That can be accommodated for sure, to make sure that we, are preserving that door within the actual building itself.
And then the existing cast iron structure with probably the steel header going across the top to connect, because I'm sure those two cast iron posts
Yeah.
are not sitting there naked. So, and that would just be painted to match
Yeah.
whatever we got going on here. But
Yeah, so
that
those-
structure is all load bearing, so that's not going anywhere.
No, the only structural modifications that we will have to do is punching through that that west wall within the space to make the opening for the stair, but that won't hurt any of the exterior elements whatsoever.
But we don't know for sure, and we can't confirm that the door on the west is the original door, correct?
Correct.
So my question is, if it's not the original door, is it necessary then that they use that door in another location?
I'll summarize my 5-minute field guide very quickly, that the original means it's been there from time immemorial, since the building was created. Authentic means it's an authentic material that has survived, that has perhaps gained significance over time. It's probably the only remnant left, other than the transom window above it, from this 1920s, 40s remodeling at some point. I think the commission has to decide if the door is something they would, fall on a sword for, so to speak, or if it's, I think the question, and I brought this up, a lot of these doors from that period can't be reversed. because the interior is a veneer and the exterior is a solid wood, and so you can't just turn the door around and reuse it and reverse the swing. And I think Justin pointed out too that, you know, it's going to be reboard and new hinges, et cetera, so you're going to have a lot of changes to it. So again, I think you have to decide whether this is a significant element to be repurposed and reused, or if there's enough alterations that, you know, maybe they reuse it, or maybe they store it in the basement for someone else to deal with later, I don't know. Again, I don't think it's from looking at it, I don't think it's an original door. I think it's an authentic door to when this was remodeled more than 50 years ago. It was definitely remodeled in the period of significance, so before 1966.
But there's nothing really, I saw the door too, there's nothing really significant in any part of the design, or, you know, it's not like there's all kinds of, you know, detailed woodwork done on it and that, and if it's,
George, did you go see the door? It's a beautiful door.
I understand.
I'd also, to the extent that the door can't be easily reused, I'd be happy to store it and donate it to anybody who could reuse it in the future.
Okay, George, were you finished? Because I have more to ask.
Go for it.
Okay. All right, I'm back in the vestibule on the west side. Okay. Now, you need to put in a stairway so that people can get to the second floor, and I totally understand that. The stairway that's there now, where does it actually go?
In terms of exiting from the building or
No.
the second floor?
Yeah, does it go up to the second floor?
Yes, yes,
Is that the same second floor that you will be occupying?
yes.
Then, okay. So looking at your floor plan, this floor plan here, where does that stairway come? The stairway that is there now?
It's in
Where
the
does that
same
come?
spot where we're modifying it.
Right,
So
in
we're
this
modifying that
location here?
straight run to come down this way, so we're modifying
You
this.
can kind of see it in that rendering, too.
This run goes, it starts here
Right,
basically, and goes all the
right.
way up to the top.
I see.
So we'd be actually overframing on top of the existing stair to
I
come
see.
this way instead,
I
so that
see.
he has easy access up.
I see, okay.
Yes, we actually wouldn't be tearing anything out with the stair. We'd be using the existing stair, overframing a landing, and then cutting into the new space. So the structural modifications would happen at that wall to cut the opening for the stair to actually come into the space.
So it is not, I'm not asking if it's easy, but I'm asking if it is remotely possible to use that stairway to go up, let's say, I don't know, 4 steps, and then have an opening in the wall so that, or 5 steps, 6 steps, an opening in the wall so that people can then come into your second floor. Why is that not possible?
I guess I'm not understanding what you're asking, I guess. You can get to the second floor now.
Yeah.
But only by going outside
Outside.
and then back in.
Right, and you don't want anybody to have to go outside. I understand that
Yeah.
totally.
Okay. So in order for that to happen, we'd be modifying that stair to come into the space, as we show it on the plan. So they'd be able to, so we are actually, kind of like you're saying, we're moving back 4 steps into it to build the landing so that they can come into the space. That's the only way that modification works. The only way to not modify the stairs and leave the door as is would be to push that door and part of that facade forward, which would then cover up the glass on the west end. This seemed like the only modification possible to kind of adhere to everyone's guidelines and needs for this building, to make it functional and respectful to the facade. The more costly item that could happen is tearing that whole stair out and relocating it somewhere else, but that wouldn't be conducive to my client's budget.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, we all have budgets.
So this seemed like the most reasonable and economical way of going about the access to the second floor from the main space.
Well, yeah, I really have a problem with this because this is the only part of the building that feels like it is original. It just feels like it. When you stand there at that doorway and you look up at the ceiling and you look up on the walls, and if you pretend that the glass block isn't there, it just feels like the 1920s at that location. And yes, it needs some cleaning, and it needs some painting and some other repair work, but I think that that's an important feature that has to be there. Now, I may be the only one on the commission, wouldn't be the first time that I was the only one that felt this way, but this is how I would feel. And I could not, if you come back with your plan, and it's like this, and you're not going to be able to use that doorway, or leave the doorway in the alcove there. If you can't do that, then I would be a no. But I'm only one of 7, so you don't have to worry about other people if they like it. I cannot overlook the historical features there. I can't.
Question.
I have a question, too.
The current door and the alcove, the way you're proposing it, are they going to be like lined up in about the same kind of space as far as the depth from the sidewalk to where, in other words, are they going to be like right on line, and then basically you're creating a landing inside and then having the stairways go there? But basically the window or glass you're going to replace the door with are basically going to line up where the existing door is now?
Yes. Yeah, so nothing on the facade will be moving. We will just be retrofitting the exact location of that door and frame that's there to accommodate a new piece of glass where the door would be removed to accommodate the landing for that stair to then go into the main space.
Carol?
Extending the landing internally.
So we're overbuilding a new landing on top of an existing stair.
And that's why you need more steps.
Yeah, so
What about leaving the door where it is, but sealing that entrance off, maybe putting a piece of dark glass in it so the door stays,
we could.
rather than having it replaced? It would just be non-functional, but
Yeah.
the original door would stay.
I'd be good with that, but not a piece of black glass. Perhaps the glass could be painted on the inside black, because that would be easy to remove.
We can frost it too. We can make it opaque, so it's
Well,
translucent, but it's not transparent.
Right, but I wouldn't want you to take the glass out.
Yeah, we
because
can
the
leave
glass
it.
is- The glass itself is probably as historic as the door is.
We can put a film on it to make it so it's translucent, and we can definitely fasten that door in. But in doing so, we would be, putting screws into that door.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
better that than it going into the dumpster.
Yeah, and we'd have to seal around it.
Yeah, no, it would
So
be
you'd still see
permanently-
like a reveal on the outside of a door,
Mm-hmm.
but on the interior, we would 100% seal it so that no
Might be
air
cheaper than
air
that window
leaks.
piece.
Yeah. So that's definitely a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Just to back up, it's not the original door.
I know, but even if it's a 30s, 20s, 30s, or 40s door, it's still,
But just because it feels like it could be a 1920 door, it's not a 1920 door, if I'm
No.
hearing this correctly.
But if it's a
So-
Michael,
1940s
did
door,
you-
it's still
are
in
you
the
saying
period of
it's-
significance.
are you saying, Michael, it absolutely is not the original door, or you just aren't sure?
What I'm actually saying, it's not a 1908 door.
It's
from
not
the
a
original-
1908 door.
I don't know when the door was put in.
Okay, good. So it's not a 1908 door.
I'm not saying it's not 1920s, I'm not saying it's not 1940s, I
Okay.
don't know. It's just
Okay.
not the 1908 door.
Okay,
I would consider possibly keeping the door, refreshing it, sealing it, maybe an option that would be very accommodating.
That could be done. If it's acceptable, for the village. Because I know, fire marshal, we just have to okay it with him and the building commission, just make sure they're okay with that.
Oh, we just make sure there's no knobs or anything on it for people to try to,
You need to keep the exterior knob to keep, the look
Right.
of the door, because if we strip it, it would just be a flat panel at that
Right.
point. So
Right.
we'd have to take the interior hardware out and blank
Right.
it, so.
So what Mr. Rios has just said, just be aware that if they do blank the door off, it's very possible the fire marshal may require a sign in fairly brilliant letters that say this is not an exit, this is not an entrance, this is not an egress, something to that effect, so firemen don't think they can access the building that way in the event of an emergency. So just so you're aware, there may be some kind of signage posted on it if they go with that solution.
I am okay with how you have had it presented initially. I am in agreement with basically being a false door also. Either way, if this is presented in the future, you know, I see your issue here with the whole staircase and what that would entail to, you know, even a full gut and move it, you know, to move that back, whatever it would take could be really expensive.
Yeah. It
And
goes all the
I
way
don't know
to
what
the
it would do to your upstairs layout as far as that. That's a whole nother issue, but, I mean, I'm okay with either way this is presented.
Thank you.
Lisa, got anything?
I know, I haven't said a word this whole discussion. You know, there's a thought that, yeah, the idea of that door, the west door, being one that is significant, yeah, if it falls within the period in question, you know, and an area of significance, then, yeah, I think it is our responsibility as a commission to make sure that elements like that get retained. I mean, it's trouble for you to, you know, redo your design, but at the same time, we have an obligation to make sure that elements like that stay intact, even if it seems like, you know, it's not an original piece. The fact that it's something that was part of an area in the time frame in question where we need to maintain those elements, then that's something that we're gonna do, or at least ask you to consider and do in your design. Yeah, as far as the rest of the facade, you know, I don't think it's our responsibility to ask you to return it to a state where it's not at right now. So some of those other elements on the facade that are kind of like what it looks like right now, but in a different color, or maybe replacing some areas that are maybe a little dilapidated and falling apart, that makes sense as well. So, yeah, but as far as that west door, I feel like it is the commission's responsibility to make sure that it stays within the project.
I would support that if there's documentation. I think we're making a pretty big assumption.
We are.
Yes, and without any evidence to support it, I couldn't agree with that. I mean, because we could be going down
A whole false trail on this, on the assumption that there's more fish to fry on that elevation as a whole than that one element that we're assuming is. And yeah, based on those pictures, I don't see photo evidence, even in the photos that are there, that support that age of that door.
I think what I'm hearing from the commission, those who are trying to save the door, is that because the storefront has been remodeled significantly on the 2/3 or 3/4 of the area, the only part that really feels early 20th century is that alcove, is what I'm hearing, because it does have the prismatic glass, it does have the original sash, has the glass block infill, it does have the door, it does have that transom, and that's all wood framing in there. That's what I'm hearing in the ceiling, but the rest of the storefront has been pretty heavily modified, so that's the only area that retains,
the
that's what I'm hearing.
columns are original.
Right.
So I disagree on that as well.
Okay.
If there are elements that support,
Preservation, it wouldn't be the door. I would look towards the columns and that
columns can't go
limestone
anywhere, they're holding the building up.
member as well, so.
But
Anyway,
they are
I
using the
mean,
columns.
all my concern is, we're going on an assumption that I would like to see some documentation on.
And I think if they complete the sale and go forward with this, I think that once they have access to the building, some of those questions could be answered, but right now, they can't do a lot of investigative work because they don't own the building yet.
True.
And I also am fine with either avenue that we go as far as the west door. I'm looking at it, if you do go to your plans where you remove the door, but you can use it on the east side, I think that that would be a more beneficial use of that door, because then that historical feeling, authentic door would be used, as opposed to keeping it where it is and blocking it off with whatever, and not have it used, but it has to be identified by the fire marshal or whomever that it can't be, it's not a usable door. So either options are workable, but I guess if the door could actually be used on the east side, that,
I would be in support of something like that, if it were to be able to just transfer locations and then still be in the project, and then have the function of the entry on the west side be a little more conducive to what you were looking for. I would be in support of something like that.
I think we just need options on the door.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one way or another, that door's gonna have to have a home.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay.
Any other questions or need any more input from us?
No, I think that's everything. So thank you for your time, and I
Well,
appreciate
thank you.
it.
Everyone, I really
Good luck.
appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I get some water.
Up next, 516 Franklin.
Thank you, Chairman Pro Tem Salmon. 516 Franklin Street came to you last month as a concept review. It is a property located in the southwest corner of the local Geneva Historic District, and it is located in the Central Geneva Historic District listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Not going to review the entire history of the project because it was thoroughly discussed at last month's meeting, and hopefully the minutes reflected that for Commissioner McManus, who was not here. But the project has not changed at all, except to complete the permit drawings from what you saw at the concept review. So without belaboring this, I'm going to let the applicants and their architect come forward and explain the project or anything that may have changed in a minor fashion that they need to bring to your attention. So, Mr. Croson and Sean, excuse me.
Good evening. We're on. Good. Good evening, Commission members. Thank you again. We were here last month with the concept review. Just a quick summary of the scope. We are adding a second floor to an existing, in quotes, modern addition, 1980s vintage for the lower floor. The lower floor is a garage with the back being a living room. Our second floor will now accommodate a bonus room over the garage portion and then a master bedroom suite above with a master bath. In our original scheme, we came in with a roof line that was different, and it caused us some grief financially because of some of the supply chain issues. And so with the contractor, we reconfigured the look with a front-to-back gable that simplified the structure. As mentioned in the last meeting, we are about 2 feet higher than the existing original house. The original house is only 19 and a half feet tall. That's short. So that's one of the shortest houses I've ever worked in. With the addition, with Blake and the height of the wall plates at the side, I have a finished wall plate where I bring my rafters furred down for insulation to about 6'11". So it's about, I guess, 4 inches shy of you, or above you. No, above you, how?
I'm 6'5".
6'5", okay. So about 6, 7 inches higher. So I get clearance there. My window heads are at 6'6". The spring point is 6'11". And then I tie all of that structure with the ceiling joists. And in order to do that, I've made the pitch match the existing house and the height of that ceiling as high as I can get before I can't support those rafters. So like a Swiss watch, we're kind of fitting it in different ways to make it work. And so with sort of the simplest version, we're mimicking the gable of the original house with the new piece. We are stepped back about 5 feet. Our front is about 5 feet from the original front of the house. And then the step back to the side is about 1.5 feet off the sides of the front of our addition. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions. I know we had tried to address as many of them as we could last visit, but please, if you have any other clarifications you need, I'd be happy to help clarify that.
So have you made any changes since the last time we talked to you?
No,
Nope. Okay.
followed the same script, and we just fleshed out the drawings, and we had the finished construction drawings, which if you saw the sections, probably were helpful to see kind of the
Yes.
heights and how we're tying the existing house in. It's, we're really stitching it in. It'll be a neat finished project.
Okay.
I don't have any questions or concerns at the moment.
Neither do I.
George?
I have none.
And I know, Lisa, you weren't here last time, so you're probably,
No, but I've read everything, and I've read through the minutes from our last meeting, so looks like it's stepped back a little bit from the original facade, which is usually a concern. So no, I don't have anything to add.
Somebody like to make a motion?
Sure. Go for it. All right, I'll give it a try. I motion to, what do I say next? Accept the
Proposal?
proposal of,
as submitted.
The
as
address,
submitted, as of,
the address.
for, wait, don't tell me the address.
560.
Don't tell me. 516 Franklin Street,
As presented.
as presented. Do I say the date? No.
No. I'll second it. Congratulations.
Hartman.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
McManus.
Aye.
Solomon.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Zinke.
Aye.
Passes.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thanks.
Congratulations.
Good luck.
Thank you. Okay,
Up next, 404 South Third.
a little traveler.
404 South Third Street is another permit review for the exterior rehabilitation of a significant property. The property is the familiar Little Traveler Shop that is located in the southern portion of the Central Geneva Historic District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and it's in the southern quarter or so of the local Geneva Historic District. The property began as a home, a private residence, that then was converted to a gift shop, originally called the Geneva Gift Shop in 1922, and became the Little Traveler under the same ownership sometime between 1923 and 1925. As I pointed out in the staff report, the building is a significant property, or the property is a significant property because more for its iconic contributions to the arts and the commercial world than it is for architecture. And I underline that because usually we're looking at architecture as the overriding factor in many of our reviews. While there is original architecture left here, it's important to understand that many architects and many builders have left their imprint on this building as it's expanded tremendously over the 100 years it's been in business. So again, I point that out because its significance lies in its commercial and its impact on the community development than more than architecture. As you can see from the historic photograph to the modern photograph below, that the building has had wings added to it. Some have been architect designed, some have just been built by additive construction. So again, it's a very large building. If you look at the lower left in the comparison aerials, and I apologize that the aerials are not real clear always, But I want to point out that one section that we'll be looking at tonight was built between 1978 and 1979. That's the gold section, or the north section of the little traveler shop. So it was built outside of the period of significance, but there is a balustrade being replaced there on a significant property. These are some pictures, and I enlarged them from what was in the staff report, so you can get a good idea of the balustrade. I believe we started looking at this about 3 years ago, just before COVID. Mr. Simon, the owner of the little traveler shops, has been looking at several alternatives to try to repair these balustrades. They actually sit there by gravity at this point, and they are in a pretty perilous condition now. I think when I was up there the one February a couple of years ago, I didn't get too close to the railings themselves. But I wanted to point out that while these particular balustrades appear to be the 1945 design of Walter Fraser, the architect whose office was in this building at one time, the railings themselves, the balustrades themselves, have been altered over time with new top rails. There have been repairs made on them, and the urns are actually replacements. If you look at some of the close-up pictures, you can see the urns are much newer than the remaining of the balustrades themselves. The original finials were actually a turned, more of a spike type of finial rather than urns. So again, there's been interpretation of these balustrades over time. The iconic thing is they create an architectural statement on the roof when you are passing by the building. Some close-up views of the railing itself. The intent is to replace the spandrel railings and retain the corner piers and repair those as much as possible, and just build new spandrel railings between the pedestals. And then they will be actually secured. They've submitted anchors that will secure these to the roof deck, so they're not just up there by gravity any longer. The north area, again, is a small balustrade that is in equally deteriorated condition. Again, it's newer. It was built between 1978 and 79. There was no historic pattern. There was no historic balustrade that this was copied from, so this was a pure whimsical interpretation of a balustrade that just fit with the kind of the whimsical and organic nature of the little traveler shops. So while this was built outside of the period of significance, which ended in 1966, it is part of a significant building. It's on a visible facade, and that's why I'm bringing it to the commission for review. So what's being proposed is to do a new railing system, new balustrade, and Mr. Simon is here with actual mock-ups that he has brought in, using a PVC material that will hold up to the elements better than new wood, and trying to create the basic flavor of the historic balustrades, and keep with the character of the little traveler, and doing this work while they're doing some roof work on the building, so they can do it coincidentally and get the anchoring of both balustrades firmly attached to the building. So with that, I would turn the lectern over to Mr. Simon, and he can talk more about the project, and he has samples that we can pull up and show to you.
Thanks. As Michael pointed out, this has been in bad shape for many years. We started looking into, in earnest at replacing them 3 years ago, and had a historic preservation contractor look at it, and the price he came up with was way out of our budget. So we've been searching ever since, and came up with this PVC material a few months ago. Oh, thanks, Michael. So what we've basically done is taken two pieces and put them opposite one another, and that's what we're hoping to do to replace the widow's walk, as Michael said, keeping the uprights, and then on this one, this would be on the Fulton Street side, the part that is not historic. we thought about not doing anything, but Michael pointed out that anything would make it look too much like a warehouse. So we tried to do something that we thought would look as good as what's there, and we think this does it, and it's something that we can cost justify and build in-house. No questions?
Mr. Simon, may I ask, have you given thought to having the same design in all three areas rather than having a second design on the north facade?
I think that would be out of scale. This is 36 inches high. This is about 12 inches high. Having something that high on the Fulton Street side, I think would look, if I may, prison-like.
Okay.
I think
But-
something more subtle like this is what makes sense for us.
But, okay, I just was wondering, in looking at this sample, you have a top member and then you have a bottom member. Is it possible to have a shorter, is that 18 inches, 12 inches, whatever it is?
12 inches, yeah.
A shorter,
Yeah.
with the same design that's on the top here, instead of something that is a little more it's a very romantic design there, and maybe just take the top piece and replace it with that, so the two would harmonize, but they might be that the height that you have in mind.
I guess theoretically we could do that. We prefer not to. We think the elements work well on their own. And since this is way up high, you're kind of seeing the form of this without the detail. This, you're going to see the detail. So I think the detail is important, and we like it, and we think it works well with the building.
Okay, all right, thank you.
One of the things I did not point out, I alluded to it, but since Commissioner Zinke brought up that the railings differ, if you look at this complex, one of the things that I think is subconsciously registered is that there's no uniformity to this building. There's a Victorian carriage house with shingles on it. There's the two Greek Revival houses, that one's become an Italianate house and with 1945 wings. And then there's the later additions from the 1980s, 1990s that have their own character as well. And so when they first were bringing these samples to me, that was one of my first questions, was should that be uniform? And the more I studied the building, I think that that's one of the things that gives the whole complex kind of its charm, is that there is no uniformity to it. It's just very organic. Like I said, I've used the word whimsical purposely in my staff report because that's kind of how the architecture's been treated since Kate Raftery started the project in 1925, so.
Very true.
Any other questions? Thoughts?
Well, I'd say that the taller of the two, the one that's on the main entry and that main core part, is a nice representation of an interpretation of what's already there. So I don't have a problem with what's on the front. I don't have issue with two separate designs. And considering the fact that side one, this lower piece is not even historic currently. I prefer this in appearance than what's there now, so I don't have a problem with any element of what you're presenting.
Jewel?
No, I don't have a problem with either of them either.
George?
Generally, I'm in complete agreement. I think the elements, though, the PVC elements somehow strike me as a little heavy. Particularly the one that would be on the Fulton
the heavy member underneath, we have this little heart filigree kind of thing, and then a small space, and then proportionately a pretty deep member that's solid. Given the character of what I see there, and I know it's apples and oranges, it just has a feeling of being a little lighter in mass that I'm seeing with these elements. And I've looked at it all of 15 minutes, and I know you've been studying it for 3 years, it sounds like, so it would be presumptuous on my part to, I don't have a suggestion whether presumptuous or not, but I think the elements just feel a tad heavy to me. And if there was some way to lighten it a little bit, to convey the image we want without all that massing, and I think from a wind standpoint, they'd probably hold up a little better if we didn't have all this mass up there anyway. So, scale, I would like to see a little lighter if possible.
Is that side balustrade up? I thought that was not up for our review. Is that true?
It's again a gray area because the property is a significant property. So yes, it's visible from the street, so we treat it like any other element on another building that is visible from the street. It does have an impact on the character. Again, it's not a historic element, so I think there's a lot more flexibility in how it's interpreted. How it's interpreted. I think the other thing, and maybe you recall or don't recall, Mike, that addition was put on under your ownership, and I don't know if there was some theory or some thought behind that baluster, if it just happened and that's what got up there, because it is pretty light now. I agree, it's pretty light, but I don't know if there was any, how that design came about, if that was just, something that got fabricated and then you went with it, or if it was purposely designed. So that might be a bearing too for some of the people who are concerned with that.
And honestly, I don't recall either.
Yeah, as a follow-up, I don't know if that was your intent either, to create more massing, was there?
Well, we wanted to try to balance it
Rather
because,
than replicate,
yeah, we wanted to do something that we thought looked kind of romantic, kind of whimsical. We didn't want it to go too heavy, so we're not going to be duplicating the top balls. We're going to have it flat.
Right.
So that will hopefully make it simpler. But yeah, we looked at a number of alternatives, and this is the one that we thought worked the best.
Commissioner Stazen, just so I understand a little bit better in case there's more questions, I think you would probably be a little more comfortable if that bottom rail was like half the depth of it. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So, and that could be
with
possible.
probably a larger open space in between the two elements, just to lighten it up a little bit.
Part of the reason we did this is we just installed new HVAC units on the roof, and we're trying to camouflage those.
Oh, okay, there are other,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Don, any questions?
No, I'm okay with what you have here. I mean, it's,
Okay, I mean, I'm fine with both ones, and that little nugget at the end about, wanting to create a little bit of a visual barrier makes perfect sense to me. I think the style that you have on the smaller balustrade here, is gonna be a nice enhancement. The current one was nice, but it just adds, like you said, a little whimsical pattern, and I think that for the Widow's Walk would be just fine. Don, would you like to make a motion?
sure. Okay, I motion to approve. I'll need some guidance on this also. The submission to, I'm looking for our address, we all know the name,
404 South Third.
404 South Third, as presented.
Second.
Second.
McManus.
Aye.
Solomon.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Zinke.
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Now we have the secretary's report.
I have no updates other than we have been reporting that the permit activity has been pretty heavy the last 2 months. It is seeming to find its own equilibrium now, so that's my update.
Is there any new business from the commission? From the public?
Absolutely. You got a minute?
Sure.
Just 1 second. Al Watts Preservation Partners. We're in St. Charles. I just wanted to invite you all to a little event that we're having. I'm sure all of you have heard of the 1893 Viking ship that is over there in Good Template Park. We're having a behind-the-scenes tour. Invite you all to come. It's on Thursday, July 7th from 5 to 7 p.m. at Good Template Park. We're going to get kind of a behind-the-scenes tour of it, get some information about the preservation of the ship and the preservation efforts of the ship and a possible future location for the ship. They're going to talk about that. We're just involved in the sense of just helping them get the word out about their efforts with that ship. So if you can come, that'd be great. Any questions?
Al, what time did you say that was?
5 to 7 p.m. on Thursday, July 7th.
Why are they looking to move the ship?
It needs a permanent home.
Yeah.
It's been under that awning, basically, if you want to call it that, for since the 1990s, I believe. So what they told me was that they were trying to get a permanent home closer to Lake Michigan, where the ship came in from. But they basically realized they just can't make that happen. So they're actually trying to find a permanent home in Geneva. So that would be really great if that can happen, because I think it would be a really great asset to the city. Even though it's a replica of a Viking ship, it's got its own history now, since it's over 100 years old itself. So.
And didn't it actually cross the Atlantic?
Yes.
And it was at the Columbian Exhibition?
That's correct. Yep.
Oh, good.
Yep. It sailed. It was built in 1891, 92. It was a replica of a Viking ship that they had found around 1890. I can't remember it's called the Gokstad. Anyway, yeah, it was built in 1893, and they sailed it from Norway through to Lake Michigan to the Columbia Exposition, in 1893.
How did it get here?
That is a long story that they can tell you when you go there.
I remember seeing it in Lincoln Park many years ago.
Yep, it's been there, yeah. As I understand, it's been to a couple places, and not even all the ship is really there. The two dragons that are on either end are actually, I believe, if my memory serves, they are still in the Museum of Science and Industry. They store them right now.
There you have them there.
Now, is this an open house, or do you need to be there at 5 for the walkthrough?
We're treating it as an open house, but I mean, people are going to come through and they're going to talk, and yeah.
Okay.
There's plenty of room at the Massa White House facility to store it, maybe.
Oh, that's
I don't know about that.
That's an idea.
They could build a big giant structure there right next to it. If anybody has any other questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I just wanted to let you know about that event happening. So.
Very good. Thank you.
If you haven't seen the Viking ship, I was invited out with some other staff members to look at the other day with Preservation Partners. It is actually a very intriguing and interesting experience to see it up close and look at the engineering behind it. So I would encourage you to go out if you can make it.
I think it's open during Swedish days too, actually, so you can go see it right now if you want. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
I so moved.
Second?
A second.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night to everybody.